Will this budget set the stage for India Inc. to come back on investment mode? Will it clear the path to the revival of growth that we've all been waiting for? And that's, I think, the moot point that everybody should be focusing on. Let me start off with Madhu Kela actually, because I think nowhere was the expectation as palpable as the markets, Madhu, because of the fact that there was a lot of expectation from that, and especially given the announcements made from September onwards as far as the finance minister is concerned. My question to you is that the event is over. Now looking ahead, does it set the roadmap for growth?
It's only in India that this budget is such an overhyped event, that otherwise budget is simple statements of income and expenditure. And I think after the budget, even the finance minister has said that it should be only treated as a event and not the event, essentially saying that there is a series of measures which they have done in the last 6 months and which they will continue to do over the course of next 6-12 months. So I am extremely confident even after the budget, whatever is being spoken by the finance minister, finance secretaries and various bureaucrats who have come in the media, which we learn that they seem to be very serious about taking this good work which is being done over the last 6 months. So there is no reason to be pessimistic about this event. Vis-a-vis the market, meaning, I think someone like me, I am not surprised because I have been around here for 22 years and it's a 1 week euphoria prior and 1 week euphoria later. And we know that life has to carry on beyond this 1 week. So I personally feel that barring a few things which I would have loved to see, I think by and large whatever they have spoken, they have done.
Okay. Mr. Madhu, I think one interesting headline on the budget was politically correct and not bad economics. I mean, that was the rough synopsis of what the finance minister did. What's your own take? As somebody who's heading a company which is more subject to global highs and lows than domestic ones, what's your take on this?
First of all, up front, I would like to say that I like the budget. I like the budget for the reasons that it didn't have any big bang announcement. I like the budget because the stock market really didn't move up or down.
It moved down actually pretty badly on the day.
Not so much, not so much.
Yeah, but
not so much. And I also liked the budget because not for the tax regime or fiscal regime what we are getting into, but it has given a basic contours within which we are supposed to act. Budget is not the panacea. We have to take many more measures to take the country forward. When we talk about whether this budget is going to really give boost to the industry as such, you see, there are measures in the budget in the manufacturing sector, in the power sector, and in various other sectors. The shops are there. But I don't think, the budget or the industry as such, when we talk about creating a climate for the industry, it is not only the fiscal things which are important. There are many more things which have to happen. Now, for industry, what you need really is resources in terms of the money, in terms of the other resources. Now, talking about the money, are the money available today at the right price? That's a question, and whether the budget has addressed that particular issue. I feel budget has not addressed that particular issue at this point of time. Maybe the RBI has to address that issue going forward. Today, if we talk about an investment, 100 rupees if we have to spend, 80% of the money comes from loan, 70% of the money comes from loan, and 20 to 30% comes from the owner's resources. So where from the 70 to 80% is going to come and at what price it's going to come, that is going to be the important matter which we have to deal with. The finance minister has talked about another theme, that inclusive and sustainable budget. He wants a development which has to be inclusive and sustainable at the same time. I have one worry on this matter actually. What is the population that we have? 1.22 billion population India has. And China is probably having about 1.33 billion. And we say that in the coming few years we are going to overcome China. So the point that arises is that if we have tried to set the basic contours of this budget, and in terms of the inclusiveness and sustainability, are you going to have sustainable development with this kind of a population?
Sure.
1.22 billion, and in the budget I expected, though it was not politically correct, but I expected him to spell out certain things about this population control. Some kind of a
I think the budget
disincentive.
cannot answer a whole lot of other structural issues in the Indian
Yes.
demographics, but I think you made your point.
Yeah.
Mr. Kuppiswamy, let me come to you. You know, one of the factors that everybody was watching out for is the macro numbers, the fiscal deficit, the current account deficit, because the sense was with the government becoming the largest borrower, private sector was being crowded out when they were going out to raise money. Of course, we will come to the infrastructure sector and the bottlenecks out there, but do you think the fact that he stuck to the math and you know, stuck to the fiscal deficit targets helps corporate India over the next year and a half?
For starters, the 4.58% figure, it's really heartening. And if the 5.2 whatever projection has been made, if that comes about, I suppose the budget would have made its job quite clearly well. Having said that, much more than that, I feel what this budget could have contributed is not the numbers, but consigning GAR to the temporary cold storage, if not oblivion, straight away. That I would call it the necessary condition for sustaining growth and investment. Sufficient conditions there will be many. 1 or 2 years really done here, like reincarnation of the investment allowance, however poorly defined. There could be other things that could have been clarified, like there was no need for any doubt about this tax residence certificate and things like that, which I think is more the reason for the fall down for the market.
That was the primary reason.
That was the reason, and not the numbers per se. So in my opinion, the budget, people have defined it in many ways. We have been chasing an elusive dream budget. You can't have a dream every day. People have defined it as a middle path budget or best balanced budget under the circumstances, things like that. I suppose this kind of definition fits the budget well. To that extent, the budget has done its job. One of the commentators during the live debate had said that, well, this budget will be forgotten before we go home. Something of that sort. Well, that doesn't happen. 5th day or 6th day, we're still debating it. Perhaps the budget success, to that extent at least, has outlived that debate.
Okay, that's not going by much, but Giri, let me get you in here. This was a bleak scenario in which the budget was actually put in the House. Of course, the run-up was substantial. You had a big marketing campaign by the government. You had a lot of serious policy measures taken. But the moot point was whether the finance minister had enough to revive economic growth. And even if you're talking about a 6.7 or 6.5% growth rate in the coming fiscal, do you think this budget had enough to allow that?
No, I don't think so. I think clearly it was a budget under constraints actually. I think on the positive side, I think I'll simply say that we seem to have a knack of performing in a crisis actually. If I sort of go back to 91, I think to that extent we seem to have reacted in a very positive fashion, apolitical and doing the right things actually. So I guess if the government starts walking the talk, I think it sets the conditions. Of course, much more needs to be done. But will it set the tone for 6.5? I don't know actually. I think only thing I will say is that the Indian economy, while the Q3 was 4.5% in terms of growth, I certainly think it's a 5+ economy actually. So therefore, I'm not sure whether the 6% or 6.5% next year is something that I need to be worried about actually. As long as the bottoming out has taken place and the uptick starts actually and the mood is created for investment, which hopefully it has actually, by the predictability and walking the talk that the government is doing. Maybe I think we have not done our job actually.
you track companies very closely, quarter on quarter. Tell me, looking ahead from this vantage point, you've come a Q4 GDP number which is extremely weak. Do you see the beginning of investments coming back on track, consumptions reviving? Because on the other hand, there is a serious hope that the RBI will now intervene and cut rates. Is that going to spur the next leg of recovery, you think?
No. In fact, that is what my concern has been for a while, and I don't see that happening in a hurry. And I think it has got nothing to do with the budget and what the finance minister does.
Sure.
There is so much capital misallocation which has happened in the bull market between 2005 and 2008 that thousands and thousands of crore rupees are yielding zero ROE or negative ROEs. And I think that is the problem. So there are two kinds of people. One who have raised their hands, and we come across every day, one more guy. And second, there are people who are trying to fix their own house. And in this scenario, to expect that someone who is yet to fix his own house is going to go out and do capex, that is difficult. The other more point is that the constraints about doing business in India because of what has happened in the last 3 years. You go and ask a business person, even simple thing you need to get done, your cost has gone up 5 times. So I am sorry to say, Mr. Hazare raised a big campaign that corruption should come down. By doing all this, actually the corruption, to my limited understanding, has actually gone up. So there are people who are asking money even for doing right things now. Wrong things no one wants to do. So I think there are plethora of things which needs to get set before the capex will start. However, what the finance minister is trying to do is possibly the right thing, which is he has said to public sector companies that whoever has got cash, either you give it to me or you invest. He has got control, so he can get things going there. The other point is from the FDI side. If you see, there is $60 trillion which is there in the world today at less than 1% interest rate. That is the kind of money which is lying. There is $10 trillion of currency which has got printed. In spite of whatever we say, India still will be the second fastest growing economy in the world. So if we are able to sell ourselves well, and I think this is where we are just doing the right thing, that if we are able to sell ourselves right and get 10, 15, 20, 30 billion dollars over the next 12, 18 months, then I think our problems will have a greater strength to solve these problems. And that is what, combined with what you asked, is taking this number of 4.8%, thereby enabling that the government borrowing should
come
down. And if you have inflow of this nature, which is possible because the world is struggling to park this capital. We did not get $25 billion because our earning is growing by 25%. We just got it $25 billion because there is no place in the world which is better than India to park this money.
Okay, but the moot question is whether we will get the next 25 billion if nothing is done, and I'll come to you with that. But Mr. Bandhu, let me ask you this question. A lot of people believe that the revival of the investment cycle will happen through the PSUs, not specifically Shipping Corporation of India, but the other PSUs who are flushed with cash. Do you think they will be the torchbearers for an investment revival? Do you have it in them, or is it at the end of the day also about consumption, also about genuine demand?
Yes, public sector, some big public sector houses do have excess money. That's what Finance Minister has been talking about, the investment of that money. The point is that whether it's a public sector or private sector, it's a climate what is important. We are all commercial organizations at the end of it. Yes, if we talk about manufacturing, I think about 50 to 60% of the manufacturing and its contribution comes from public sector. And we have the money to do it. What I feel is that we are willing to invest, like if you take example of the Shipping Corporation of India, we are the largest shipping company. And we have invested in the 11th 5-year plan, we have invested a lot. But everything came down after the 2008, 2009, because we all are now global. And anything happening in the global scenario, it affects all of us. This is not only the Indian industrial climate, but the global climate also makes difference. As I was talking about the availability of the money, and availability of the, you have been also talking about this availability of the money. It has to come from outside. How you attract those money? So we have, public sector has the money to contribute 30%, but I have to get 70% money from outside, and I must get that money from outside. It has to be FDI, it has to be FII, it has to be ECB, but then today the situation is that the attractiveness is going down. We have to make us attractive.
Right.
Can I just add one point to this? See, I worry about this use it or lose it principle actually, because as a CFO I've now seen companies with cash can indiscriminately invest. You know, the point that Madhu made earlier about capital allocations going completely wrong for a lot of the private sector companies, and many companies are cleaning up their own acts actually. I don't want this to be an opportunity for public sector undertakings to fritter away into capital investment which are not well thought of actually. So we need to be very careful here actually. So it is not simply saying that the government forces PSUs to invest and under pressure they sort of invest actually. I mean, it's a mix of everything. Consumption has to be there. Everything has to come through to justify the investment on its own merit actually.
Ms. Kuppuswamy, let me come to you. In the infrastructure sector, I think the statistics are appalling. Absolutely. If you look at the power sector, and we will have a detailed discussion on power later on, 100,000 crores stuck up in pending plants, power plants, and yet the 12 5-year plan has a target of setting up a capacity worth 88,000 megawatts. Now, I don't see any Indian company with the bandwidth to be able to bet or put money for the next leg of development. If this is the kind of money that is stuck up, how do you declog this to allow investments coming back? I mean, how can you first clear this backlog?
True. On this particular point, the answer lies not in the budget, outside the budget.
Sure.
Policy initiatives have been lagging for more than 2 years now. Like you mentioned the power sector, let's say on pricing, pass-through of increases in fuel prices and things like that. They have not happened. They've been debated ad nauseum, nothing has happened yet. Once that kind of a conclusion comes to this power imbroglio, I suppose it will not be difficult to attract investments in the power sector at all. I think any number of corporates, top corporates are waiting only for this to happen.
But 100,000 crores is a lot of money.
How do you may not come to that much, but definitely.
I'll make the point. I think in India things only happen when there is a crisis. But that is the time you realize that this was not, the decision was not being taken for a particular person, but it was taken because there was a crisis. And now we are coming to a point wherein, we have investments in companies in Andhra Pradesh who are buying power at 12 rupees and 14 rupees per unit. Last quarter, this is what the price at the bar. How can you have a capacity of thousands of megawatt which can produce power at 3 or 4 rupees when consumers are willing to pay at 12 rupees? So there is a solution will come. But unfortunately so, as Mr. Kuppuswamy was mentioning, because last 2 years nothing happened, everything has got bundled up. And now we are expecting everything should get solved in a matter of 2 months or 3 months.
It cannot happen.
So it can't happen. So that debate will happen. But I am very confident that over the next 6 months, and this is why I said that the government has done a lot in the last 6 months, and if they just continue that path beyond budget, in power sector, there has been a lot of debate which has happened on coal pooling, there is a lot of debate which has happened on some of these power plants which are being set up as a fixed tariff and a lot of things which have changed. So need to redo the tariff agreement. There is a lot of debate which has happened at CS level. I think that all debate will come to an end and finally the solution will emerge.
Sure.
But the question is, can that happen over the next 6 months or is it going to take 2 years?
Can we afford to let it slip at this juncture?
No, we can't.
You cannot, and the solution doesn't lie in the budget. Like we just mentioned the power sector, let's take the road sector. Most of the projects have really not taken off. You know that the two big leaders have really backed out of 2 projects for the simple reason that land acquisition didn't happen. Now these are all this is the homework that the government has not yet done. Once that happens, I don't see too much of a problem. Infrastructure can still attract money. It will be possible. Taking a cue from what you had mentioned to the Mr. Mandal earlier, no? Do you think it's possible that the public sector undertakings who have a lot of funds, can channelize part of that into infrastructure sector?
That's almost a plea.
Well, normally infrastructure leads
you see,
to that. But
you see, we do get connected to infrastructure in some way or others, you know. If you talk about the infrastructure, power is the infrastructure sector, and BHL is there to, you know, add to it. Because I also belong to power sector, just 1 or 2 sentences I would like to mention, since we are talking about the power sector. In post-90, when we started reforms of the power sector, we went in a way that's a top-to-bottom approach. We should have rather went from bottom to top approach. You can privatize, you can set up power stations, but what's going to happen to the distribution?
Sure.
Who is going to pay the money for it? I think we have to correct that. And there are a lot of steps being taken. There's a lot of coordination between the central and the state. I hope things will improve.
Right.
I'll just tack on the infrastructure point. No, this again not within the budget. We have somehow created a scenario where a lot of players have got into the infrastructure sector, bidding very aggressively, bagging projects at totally unrealistic rates. I think all the banks and everyone is sitting on a volcano right now.
Sure. And that only makes it worse, because it's not just about
I can't agree more with him. So when your project is not finishing, you don't blame the finance minister and the budget.
It's not
the
the
fact of the matter is that when you bid this road project in 2008, interest rate was 8%.
Sure.
And you budgeted that on 8%, I'll do this math. And you because there was euphoria and optimism, you budgeted that there's going to be a 10% tariff hike. Now both of them have collapsed. So you are doing 75% of your funding at 12%.
So what you're essentially saying is that we might not have seen the end of the pain right now. What we could possibly see is a sharper fall before we actually see a recovery, because there is also talk, Madhu and Mr. Kupaswamy, of a lot of shakeout, especially in sectors like roads, in power. A lot of distressed power plants are up for grabs.
Which is what is
and nobody is picking it up because their math is not adding up.
That's
because
right.
of what.
And that has to happen.
So do you expect a lot of damage before the actual investment cycle revives?
I'm afraid such a thing is waiting to happen unless some redressal measures are taken place. What exactly the redressal measures are, I'll not be in a position to say it in one session. We'll have to sit together, people have to debate.
Okay, Giri, let me come to you. Pharma is kind of protected from a lot of this because of the nature of business. But my question to you is, as a CFO, in each of these CFOs in this room will also endorse, how do you make an investment for a 5 to 10 year horizon with so many moving parts? Because very often in areas like infrastructure and crucial sectors like power, roads, etc., that becomes a really tough decision where you don't have the control.
Yeah. No, I think that's clearly what we seek is some extent predictability, and I think that is what we spoke. You invested 8%, you expect a certain tariff increase, it doesn't happen, your math can go for a toss actually. So clearly I think it's how robust you think the assumptions are, and how much you have confidence in terms of those assumptions, especially which are not under your control actually. I think that is the crux of it actually. And ultimately the risk capital, there is certainly a certain element of risk capital which is important actually. And those risk capital providers, I think we need to broad base that actually, frankly speaking. If you're sort of talking about a long project actually, I think the question is, are you providing for enough risk capital to take care of these ups and downs actually? And if you have, and if you sort of get much better in terms of takeout financing, longer term, deepen for instance the bond market as an example actually, where you can get longer term money which can support projects and bear with the uncertainties of it. I think that's a good way of sort of going about it actually.